Well, turns out there is no shim. It was glued straight to the to the front of the guitar. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to glue that back in place, and then I'm going to need to raise the bridge somewhere between 1 and 2 millimeters, probably closer to 1 than 2, in order to set my pickup height, so to speak, to the strings. And then I'm going to have to add probably about a Coke can's worth of shim under the front of the neck in order to adjust my action, because I will have raised the bridge, which will raise the action. And so, yeah, it's either that or I have to like route out some a little bit or carve this out a little bit to lower the pickup a mil or so. And it sounds like a lot easier to just raise the bridge slightly and shim the neck slightly. So that's the battle plan. Well, I was hearing a little fret buzz around 5 or so while I was tuning it up. So I had to get into it a bit, and sure enough, it was off by an eighth of a turn, a quarter turn. So first I did this guy, and then I did this guy, and everything's all nice and flat again. So bring it back up to tension. Alright, I'm still not quite happy with the neck. See the string alignment left to right? It's off at the moment because I haven't adjusted it. And what's going on is that the holes for the screws that go through the body really need to be ever so slightly larger than the screws themselves in order to give you a little wiggle room. On a bolted neck, it's kind of nice, shall we say. On the neck side, you want these holes to be nice and tight so you get a really good grip and good bite with the screws. But on the body side, you want a little bit of slop so that you can get everything straight. So where I'm at is these body holes for these screws don't give it enough play, and this one right here on the neck side needs a bit more stuffing because it's not as tight as I want it to be. So I'm gonna loosen it yet again, once more under the breech. I'm gonna detune it yet. It's other than that, everything's straight as far as like it's in tune, and the bridge is pretty much level, and all I would have to do would be back off the screws in order to get it back to full float from lock mode. Well, maybe not, because I had my shims here, but yeah, so maybe it's like, already at float kind of a thing, and yeah, but the alignment's off a little bit, and the action is still on the high side, but my pickup height is pretty good, so it needs a bit more shim, maybe a Coke can worth, and I want to get a bit more play in those body holes, and I also want to pack up this one neck screw hole a bit because it's a bit sloppy. It's not tight enough for my taste. So once more under the breech, we detune it yet again, and now when I'm doing all this stuff, I'm not changing the screws, because they're pretty much where they ought to be for when it's in tune and under tension and it's zero float. So yeah, the last 2 or 3 times that I've messed around with it and taken the tension off, I haven't moved the screws at all. I'm moving the bridge up and down, I'm tuning and detuning, and I'm adding and removing neck shims and taking the neck on and off in order to do that, but I'm not moving the claw screws, and that means I'm not changing the spring tension. So yeah, once more, onto the breech. God is in the details. Rome was not built in a day, but obviously this guitar wasn't either. And yeah, sometimes you gotta break a few eggs to make a real mayonnaise. This is one tedious aspect of building guitars this way that I've discovered, is that sometimes it takes you a few tries in order to get the correct amount of neck shim to get you in a good range for the bridge height adjustment that you're dealing with. On this one here, really I'm more or less shooting for almost no adjustment because the bridge is adjusted to a hard mounted pickup, and so all of my adjusting is coming here, and it's a pain. It's a pain. So yeah, okay, alright, back to it. Okay, got a little bit of wooden CA glue in each of these neck screw holes just to tighten things up a bit, and stepped up to 2 mil worth of shim here. Now it's time to put it all back together and bring it all back up to tension and see what I got. Okay, if you take a look at this neck, you'll see that it's got one of these thin heels on it. So the neck is more or less 20 millimeters the full length, and the heel is also 20 millimeters thick. Because of this, when you go on this neck screw, you've got this inlay dot. Down here at this neck screw, no inlay dot. But on this one, you've got an inlay dot. And so you'll notice that this actually uses two different lengths of screw. This is the standard length screw, and that one goes here. And then this shorter one was actually used to just be cut off flat with the bolt cutters there. And that one goes here, and it needs to be shorter because if you use a standard length screw, it actually goes in so far that it pushes this inlay up out of the fretboard like 1.5 to 2 millimeters, and then you have to tap it back down into place. So since I keep stuffing this thing with wood, and this was cut off flat, I decided to use the Dremel and kind of try to put a point on it without making it any shorter, so that it'd be a little easier to get it started when I go to screw it in. God is in the details, right? Okay, got the neck back on. It's now running, don't know if you can see it in there, it's a little piece of black pickguard material. It's now running 2 mil worth of shim. The first time I tried 0.3 mil, the second time I tried about 0.8 mil. Now stepped it all the way up to 2 mil. I was starting to bring them back up to tension, but number one string broke, so got to dig up a replacement. The number one string seems to be about the only string I ever break these days. I mean, this thing's already been tuned and detuned half a dozen times at least, so yeah, it let go. And there what I did was, instead of going through a whole box of Ernie Ball 8s, I just went to stringjoy.com and I'll buy like, a dozen just 8s at a time. And then, and then when I need new strings, I got a set of Ernie Ball 8s, and when I bust one string, 9 times out of 10 it's this string, and I just got a bunch of extra 8s. So yeah, stringjoy.com. Good thing to remember. It can be handy.